What is going on, everybody? It's Monday. Welcome back to the Diehard MMA podcast. I am your host, as always, your boy Clint, coming to you with all the hot takes and the breakdowns. This is odds.com, and this is the Diehard MMA podcast for UFC 259. Quite literally the most stacked card so far of 2021, and probably going to be the most stacked card for the entire year. It's going to be hard to one-up this one. We've already got 86 live viewers. Thank you all so much for spending your Monday nights with me. How is everybody doing? We've got Joshua Lazar, Grateful Dude, Peter Cirillo, Yan. We've got Jason Watson, Kimiko Senpai, Anthony Giordano, Ryan Botelli, The Gaming, Wolf Fender, Jazz. We've got Lucas 23, Roberto Lopez, Undertaker, Hayden Schneiderman, Bill Withers, my guy, Niels Land, Taylor Roberts, Daniel Rodriguez, BC Bandejas, Lee Lewis, Tony C. We got the whole crew. We got everybody hanging out. How are you all doing this evening? And we got Ed in the house. I see you, Ed. You're in here too. Brian Anthony, what's going on? Angie, how you doing tonight? Zaid, we got a ton of people. Everybody chilling, hanging out. Excellent fight card to break down. Real quick, we got to do the recap of last week. Now, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on it because what a shit show last week was. I don't know anybody who got out of there with a W. Except this guy. Last week, we had Vince Cachero, Sabina Mazo inside the distance, Kevin Kroom. We had Ankalaev over 1.5 and by decision plus 275. We took a stab on Jairzinho Rozenstruik. And if you follow me on Twitter, what you must do, you must follow me on Twitter at Diehard MMA Pod, because sometimes I make late plays. I added on Pedro Munoz. I was on him from the beginning. I got talked off him. I wishy-washed, and I decided stick with the original read, and we cashed on Pedro Munoz, and that is what pushed us over the edge into profit land. We made 0.25 units. That's right. We made a quarter of a unit, but a win is a freaking win. I will take it. And so we are rocking the blue Diehard Stimulus Check shirt because it is lucky as of right now since we went ahead and got it done last week. So I will take the W. Let's move on to the biggest, baddest card we could have ever asked for. And I'm going to bring in my guest here. We are joined by the president of U.S. Integrities, my man, Matt Holt. Matt, how you doing tonight?
Clint, what's going on, my friend? You were right. I mean, I thought you kicked off the show great. What a tough card. So many attractive opportunity for underdog bettors, and they all fell by the wayside.
It was crazy. It's, we see the ups and downs of variance. 2021 has been an underdog card so far this year. I mean, underdogs cashing left and right. And last week, they all fell flat. Everybody got close, couldn't quite get it done. I mean, I was on De La Rosa, and if it wasn't for the fence grab, she probably loses that decision. So, I mean, it was nasty last week.
Yeah.
So tough card. Like I said, I know a lot of people got slaughtered. Not a lot of people had the opportunity to make money. I am super happy that I got out with the shirt on my back.
I mean, sometimes it's double bad when a card's not very exciting and you're losing money. We went to a friend's house, my wife and I, to watch that main event, and that was brutal to watch for 5 rounds, especially if you're on Rozenstruik and the underdog never threw a shot. I mean, he never tried to win that fight.
It was really tough to watch, Matt, especially because I felt like if he came out and gave his best effort, that line was wide. I felt like they were disrespecting him a little bit, and it turns out it's up to the underdog to push it. You know what I mean? If you're losing the fight, you got to do something, and he was willing to stand there for 25 minutes. We've got a new worst main event in UFC history, and, I talked about playing the overs like I do, every single round over, but then I thought, this is Jairzinho, this is gone, the power these guys throw, there's no way they're going to go out like Lewis and Blades did, and Ngannou and Lewis did, and sure enough, that's exactly what happened, and rough night, man. Rough night for a lot of people. Even just watching it was kind of hard.
Yeah.
I got to give a shout out here in the chat real quick. Daniel Rodriguez. Yes, of course. My record is totally open and transparent, and I do count the round sprinkles. I was just trying to cut through the picks for last week and get it done quickly. So I always do lottery tickets, Hail Mary parlays, round sprinkles. They are all counted into my wins and my losses, so don't worry. That's in there. I was just going over the main picks. All right, so we got Matt Holt with us, and we're going to break down UFC 259. We got 157 people in the chat hanging out with us tonight. Thank you all very much. Real quick, before we kick this thing off, I do have to go ahead and give out my degenerate NHL picks because that's what people love these days. And I'll be honest, every time I do that on a Monday show, it seems to be pretty lucky. We do pretty well. So I'm going Panthers, Flames, Jets, Oilers, Wild, Avs. There you go. That's the degenerate hockey action. Matt, let's kick this thing off, man. We are starting off with a bang. We've got Mario Bautista taking on Trevin Jones in the bantamweight division. And you know what? I'm going to shake it up a little bit. Do you want to start us off? Do you want to tell me what do you feel about this one?
Look, I love this fight, and I actually think this is a showcase fight. And sometimes opening fights to a card are supposed to be showcase fights. This one feels like it is a little bit to me here. Bautista is really good. This is a guy who's fought good competition in and outside of the UFC, 8-1 and 8-1 in his career, with his only loss to Corey Sandhagen. That loss couldn't look any better now. 3 knockouts, 3 subs, so he has finishes in 6 of his 8 wins. He's 5'9" compared to only 5'6" for Jones here. I think he's going to use that height advantage, that size advantage. I think he's better everywhere this fight goes. And the minus 220, and I rarely lay a favorite, but I would consider laying minus 220 here because I'm not exactly sure how I see him winning this fight. At first, I thought I was going to play him just inside the distance. I might even play him by knockout because I think that power may show up here versus Jones. I may even get a grounded pound knockout late. But at the end of the day, I really like Bautista here in this fight and believe truly that they actually set him up for a showcase win here.
Yeah, this is one that I'm really struggling on, Matt. This is such a big card. There's so many great opportunities for betting. I'm going to take my first pass on this one because we've got Bautista, who's done nothing but impress. I mean, this kid is 8-1. He's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, super light on his feet. He explodes and closes the distance. He knows how to use his length. My only issue is he gets a little wild in there sometimes. He'll throw flying knees. He's willing to brawl. He drops his hands, and he's going up against Trevin Jones. Now, Jones, I'm not sure what to think of this guy. He dug deep against Timur Valiev in his last fight, and then he flatlined the dude that we've seen is just levels above what he showed us that first day. He's training at Extreme Couture. He's actually a black belt in jiu-jitsu, extremely physically strong, and all this guy does is wing big power shots, and if he ends up on top of you on the ground, he will beat you through the canvas. So I'm not going to touch this one because I understand that Bautista is probably deserving of the price tag that he's got. He's been bet up right now as well. He's all the way up to minus 235. And I can't do it. Not with the way that I've seen him get in there and wing. He's relied on his chin to this point so far. And if anyone's going to crack that chin, Jones has shown that he's fully capable of doing it.
He may crack him a bit. I also think he's going to win a bit. I just feel like he's even a bit small for this weight class. And Bautista is huge. He's a big, sturdy 5'9". You're going to see when these two get close to each other that Bautista is going to look a full weight class heavier than Jones. 3 inches taller, big reach advantage, big size advantage, big shoulders. These two look a weight class apart. And let's say that the talent disparity isn't that far apart. At the end of the day, I don't know. I mean, I feel like we have to say Bautista's talent level right now is probably a little bit ahead of him. Add in all the size advantages. Feels like Bautista to me. And I never say favorite or pass, but it feels like favorite or pass here.
Yeah, that is an absolute tough spot to go. I really don't like favorite or pass myself, but I mean, you're right. I got to pick him to win. I just can't put my money on it. The things I've seen, the way he drops his hands, that lucky shot that Jones landed is totally there this fight. So I'm tempted, and maybe a fight doesn't go to decision, or maybe looking at under 2.5 a little bit later. But this one, from a side perspective, I think I'm just going to sit it out.
Yeah, and that's okay.
Yep, not the most exciting way to start a card, but like I said, this card is, as long as it stays intact, everybody say a prayer, sacrifice a goat, light a candle, whatever you got to do. Let's keep as many fights on this card as we can this week, because if it stays together, this one is nuts. And I got to give a shout out to my boy Gavin here. You know, to quote the prophet Derek Lewis, where's Canadian Bacon's fine ass at? Where's he at? Matt, if you missed last week's show, we had a very vocal hater in the chat who swore that if I had a profitable night, he would buy all 300 people in the chat dinner. And wow. I ended up coming home with a win. So we're waiting to see if Canadian Bacon shows himself this evening on the live stream. And I'm gonna ask that he put his Venmo in the chat so people can request at least $11.50, because that's what a Chipotle burrito costs. So everyone can get
fair.
Yeah, that's fair, right? We're not doing lobster, but give people something that's at least filling. Some tacos, a burrito.
I think that's more than fair. It's probably generous.
Right? I think so too. Yeah. We like to have fun here.
Look, I love people that are willing to put their money where their mouth is, step up, make a bet. But when you lose that bet, you have to pay up.
Exactly. You can't only report the wins. You got to report the losses. Got to man up. Let's go. And Tim Johnson not taking that answer. He wants a steak. All right. Next up, we got a lightweight fight. We've got Uros Medic taking on Aalon Cruz. Uros is 6-0 undefeated. Cruz is 8-3. Uros comes to us from the Kings MMA, which is doing really well right now. He's off the Dana White Contender Series. This guy throws spinning attacks on the feet. He's got a nasty left body kick. He likes to attack the low calf. And he's got a sharp left hand that I noticed comes right down the pipe that hurts a lot of people. He's a big dude, too. He used to fight at 170 pounds. So he's coming down to lightweight, which we always see that. Well, I was going to say we always see it pay dividends, but, you know, it adds a new wrinkle in, because if that cut doesn't go well, if he has any issues, if he's, you know, not as weak, the gas isn't there, it can actually be a bit of a problem. He does come from Alaska FC, and he's got an extremely padded record. Let me tell you, the only legitimate opponent that he fought and beat was the guy that he beat on the Dana White's Contender Series. So everybody else was an absolute bum, most of them having losing records or only 1 or 2 fights. Aalon Cruz on the other side, he also is a guy that we're just kind of barely getting used to. He's got a very rangy kicking game. He's got a snappy left jab that I like, and he level changes really well. The timing is solid. He likes to work the legs and the body to soften his opponent up, and then he likes to do this karate side kick to kind of keep his opponent at the range where he wants them. He's another guy that can pull out the flying KO with the knees and things like that. He's going to have a 7-inch reach advantage, a ridiculous 7-inch reach advantage here. And what I noticed is he can get out muscled. He's coming up to 155 from 145. So we have an interesting situation where one guy is dropping from 170 to 155. The other is coming up to 155 from 145. And I'm not quite sure what to make of it, Matt. I'm scratching my head a little bit. I feel like it's dog or pass, and part of me wants to take the shot on Aalon Cruz because he'll be the guy that's stronger, healthier, not cutting the weight anymore, as opposed to the guy who's now sucking himself out and trying to make a new weight class for the first time. And to be frank, somebody who I'm just not impressed with so far in the UFC. What do you think of this one?
Right away, when I saw an undefeated kid from Alaska, because this isn't the first time we've seen an undefeated fighter from Alaska come in and get absolutely overmatched in the UFC, I was looking to bet against him too. But at the end of the day, I thought these guys were kind of mirror images of each other, especially from a body standpoint. You have a 6'1" guy who's going to drop down to 155, really tall, really lanky, against the guy who is 6 feet tall fighting at 145. I mean, these are both the same body types. And at the end of the day, I'm a little bit worried that two guys with somewhat similar styles, very similar body types, and one guy's going to be a lot bigger coming down than the guy going up, that might just be advantage enough to have the line justified where it was. So I've passed so far. And I'll be honest with you, I'm going to have a hard time talking myself onto the dog. I went back and watched the Mikey Gonzalez fight because it's basically the only fight you can watch of Medic at this point of any value. He looked pretty good as long as it lasted. I mean, it was pretty quick, so it didn't last long. And Mikey Gonzalez was a tough guy. And give Medic credit. He got him out of there in, 2 minutes?
Yeah.
I mean, I always want to fade. I just saw the Alaska fade. I always want to fade those padded Alaska guys because you talk about padding records.
Yeah.
That's what they do there. But I'm having a hard time landing on the dog here, who I just feel is probably going to – unless the weight cut is bad. I mean, 6'1", 155, that could be a tough weight cut.
Yeah. So, I mean, shout out to my guy, James Lynch, who does the best UFC interviews in the business. He got Aalon Cruz on his show, and he said that's the reason for the move up to 155. He was one of these guys that was just killing himself, too tall, too long, too big. And I saw some of the images he's posted on Instagram, some of his training shots and stuff like that. And I got to tell you, you can already see a difference just in the thickness of the guy's thighs. Like, trying not to keep himself down at that weight class mid-camp, I think it's going to, pay dividends. I think he's going to have a much increased strength cap that'll help him out in this spot. And I know you mentioned Medic's fight against Mikey Gonzalez on the Contender Series. I got to tell you, I know he got him out of there early. I know he got him out of there quick. But I think something was wrong with Mikey. He didn't want a piece of it from the very get-go. Like the second he got touched, and maybe I'm just underrating Medic, but Mikey wanted out of there immediately. He didn't even
sort of
try
like
to
Dan
fight.
Hooker, Michael Chandler.
Yeah, it was like that. It was like, we have seen this guy. We've seen him tested. We've seen him fight before. And for some reason tonight, he's just not having it. So I'm not sure if I'm entirely sold on Medic yet. And especially with the Alaska FC fade, this is one I'm staring pretty hard at, and I might take the stab on the dog. I haven't locked in a bet on this one yet, but it's a dog or pass spot for me.
Yeah, I just can't talk myself into it yet on the dog, so we'll see. I think the size difference, I want to see him a little bit both this week, and to your point, see how Cruz looks, because my gut feeling was that Medic might be a lot bigger. I don't love Medic's skill set. I don't know that he's a lot better, but I'm a little nervous he could be a lot bigger.
Yeah, that size and strength may pay a difference. And as most of you in the chat know, if you're new to the show, my best work is done on Fridays. I do a post-weigh-in recap where I break down how these people look on the scales and stuff before they step in the cage. This is one that will be a pin in. I'm going to be watching this one very, very closely for exactly that reason. Because if Aalon Cruz comes out looking like a beast and his opponent looks like he's a little sucked out trying to make 155 for the first time, I'll hammer Cruz at that point. So this one's going to be a late addition if we get there.
I agree. I think you definitely need to watch the weigh-ins for this fight. It's
a good one to remember for sure. Everybody take notes.
Especially when you have both fighters fighting at different weight classes.
Yeah. It's an interesting adjustment for absolutely both guys involved. It's going to be great. I can't wait to see how they both look on the scale. This is going to be fun. We have 337 live viewers already. Thank you all very much. It's not usually this early we hit that number, so I appreciate it. Everybody do me a favor, smash that like button down below if you're enjoying the free content we bring to you every single week. Give me a retweet if you're on Twitter. Let's try and hit 500. I want to break that 500 number tonight since we got such a big, awesome card going on. One thing that I do want to give a bit of a shout out, there's a podcast that I personally listen to. It's called MMA by the Numbers. The guy's name is Jason Chandler that hosts the MMA by the Numbers podcast. I'm a bit more of a feel guy. I like to use stats. I like to use numbers. I mix that into my handicapping, but it's only when it makes a significant difference, when there's a huge gap in the numbers, that I really feel like it's worthy of mentioning. If it's a slight advantage, it's not usually something that I use, but every once in a while, something just stands out and punches you in the face that you absolutely have to pay attention to that number. He breaks down the numbers like nobody else. He makes them super easy to digest, and he's launching a new website where he's going to give much more in-depth striking and grappling and control numbers than anybody else on the net today. Like I said, I use the guy myself. I make sure to follow his show and listen to his podcast every single week. Now he's going to have a place that you can go every single week to pull the numbers for the fight coming up. So everybody make sure you check out MMA or UFC. Sorry, UFC by the Numbers is a podcast everyone needs to be listening to. And that's not a sponsorship or anything. I just like the guy, and I'm telling you, it's something important if you're looking to make money betting on fights. We got a women's strawweight fight coming up here. Matt, this is one that I'm so upset that I didn't get to earlier. We've got Livia Souza taking on Amanda Lemos. Souza is 14-2, and I got a soft spot for this girl. I don't know what it is, but I like what she brings to the cage. And Lemos is 8-1-1. She's kind of taking a bit of a slow road, a bit of a longer road there. And this is a crazy spot. The line opened up -215 for Souza, and it's completely flipped. Souza is now a +175 underdog. Matt, when I took a first glance at this one, my initial instinct was I'm all over Souza. This girl is mean. She's a former member of the Brazilian Judo Olympic team. She likes to work that low calf kick. She swings these big power shots. She uses straight punches, excellent submission defense, a nasty top game, and she always stays busy if she gets on top of you. She looks for the finish. She looks to TKO you and get you out of there. And I'm just like, she's got to be a small favorite here. I'm looking to bet her. And then I watched the tape on Lemos. And Lemos is going to have a significant size advantage, a 2-inch reach advantage, and she's got this heavy Muay Thai stance. Going to be really hard to peel her to the ground. She's got a stiff jab, and she wings big-time power shots. And I've seen her hit some people with some shots that I don't know how some of the women have survived the shots that she's landing on them. And she does absolutely everything with pure raw strength and power. And that is the biggest factor to me here. Livia Souza is the one who relies on that strength, who relies on that power. And if she can't overpower Lemos, I don't think she's got much of a shot in this fight. If I could have got Lemos as an underdog about a month ago, I would have smashed that spot. But the problem is, Lemos is -210 now, -200. So this is another spot where, kind of like we talked about, I feel like it's favorite or pass, and I don't want to lay that price. How are you looking at this one?
I was looking at the over, but the problem is the over is going to offer you just as much. So at the end of the day, I do think Souza is probably going to be tough enough to make it the distance here. And, I mean, she's fought a murderer's row throughout her career. She fought a lot of fights in Invicta. She fought Angela Hill in Invicta. I mean, she has a legit resume coming into the UFC, and now she's 5-1 in the UFC. So I wanted to bet Souza, actually. I looked for a lot of reasons to actually bet her. And then the more I watched it, too, and thought about how the fight was going to go, I actually thought she was going to have some problems handling the size and strength and power of Lemos. But I also thought that she was probably going to hang in there because throughout all her fights with some pretty talented young ladies, you know, I mean, she's beat Ashley Yoder in her last. I mean, she has some legit wins. She's been put in some tough spots a couple of times. I thought, well, this one feels like one of those fights where maybe I just suck it up and lay the -190 that the fight will go the distance.
That may be the path here. Souza is so tough and gritty and nasty that I don't see anybody putting her away anytime soon. And same thing with Lemos. Like, she is super tough, and the one time she got TKO'd in the third round, it's because she hit the girl with the kitchen sink and had nothing left to give and gassed out. And that was like 4 years ago. So since then, she's been much more refined, much more conscious of her gas tank, hasn't tried to kill anybody until she smells blood, and then she can go for it. I'm going to say that this is going to be Lemos by decision, but I wouldn't be surprised if Souza puts up a bit of a fight.
Yeah, and maybe, I mean, I think you have to look into those type of props in this fight, whether it's Lemos by decision, will go the distance, something like that, because I don't see either one of these ladies getting the other one out of there. I think Souza's plenty tough, and her submission game, and I don't think there's going to be a lot of submission attempts by Lemos, who prefers to ground and pound when she gets down there rather than hunt for submissions, and I think Souza's plenty tough to get to the end. So maybe it's just Lemos by decision, which you could probably get in like the -120 range. That's probably what it's going to be for a range.
It's plus 110. You can actually get
Oh,
Lemos
wow,
by
even better.
decision at plus 110, which that may be the way I'm looking at this point.
Yeah, that's probably the right side right there.
Yep. Well, once again, no bet locked in on this one for me personally, but looking at the Lemos side, don't know that I want to parlay her at that line or anything like that, but Lemos by decision doesn't seem like a bad look. Rely on the toughness of Souza to get all the way to the judges' scorecards and just hang on. All right. Next up, we've got a really interesting fight, one that I cannot wait to talk to you about, Matt. Welterweight fight between Sean Brady and Jake Matthews. Undefeated, 13-0 Sean Brady, taking on the UFC veteran Jake Matthews, who is 17-4. And these guys are almost like they're looking in a mirror here, Matt, don't you think?
Yeah, I do. I actually like Matthews a bit here. I mean, at that price, how can you not like Matthews a bit? I just think it's at plus 200 on Matthews. 6-1 his last 7. The only loss in the last 7 to Anthony Rocco Martin. This kid's still only 26 years old. We forget it because he's been in the UFC so long that he feels like he's 46, but he's 26 years old. Look, I put no stock in the Diego Sanchez fight other than the fact that he dominated every second of it. I mean, there wasn't 1 second of success for Diego Sanchez in that fight. But even before that, I think he's had a recent run of good performances. You know, anytime you go 6-1 in a 7-fight run in the UFC, you're doing something because you're not going to get 5 cupcakes in 7 fights. So if you've won 6 of 7, you're accomplishing something. And I just think Brady doesn't have a ton of experience. He hasn't been in there with a ton of huge guys. I mean, I don't know, Christian Aguilera in the last one. Whatever, that's okay. That guy's tough, and he had a knockout in his fight before that against a guy a lot bigger than him, so okay. But at the end of the day, Matthews' wrestling is starting to become elite. And his striking is a little bit better. And at plus 200, I don't know that the gap between these two is very wide. I mean, I don't love Matthews. He's a hard guy to lay as a big favorite. But you know what he does every time he's a big favorite? He wins. So, I mean, this is a guy that always gets it done when he's supposed to. At the end of the day here, there's no way I could lay 240 with Sean Brady in this spot. I think these two are pretty close.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm struggling. Like I said, I kind of feel like they're looking in a mirror. Brady is the hot hand right now. This is the guy that everybody is all over and everybody loves because he's done nothing but be a wrecking ball since the moment he stepped into the cage. But both guys are strong wrestlers. Both guys are Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts. Both guys have decent boxing. Both guys can move well, and they're elusive on the feet. Both of them are defensive from their striking perspective. Jake Matthews is going to be 1 inch bigger. He's going to have a 1 inch reach advantage, and he's no stranger to grappling whatsoever. So I think really the biggest thing that I can give Brady is I would expect him to have a slight strength advantage, and that's what's kind of edging me to the way of Brady. I like the check left hook that he has, and he's got that back, man. If you see that guy, he is double broad from the back because of his wrestling. Brady is more wrestling. Matthews is more jiu-jitsu, and that's kind of where I navigate a little bit. I would like Brady here, but I would only like him at like minus 150. I don't want to lay this big of a price tag on him. If anybody's been watching this one, Jake Matthews was plus 245 on the opener, and he's been bet all the way down to plus 175. Lots of money coming in here in the underdog. So from a betting perspective, I think this is Matthews or pass, but at the end of the day, I do still think Brady gets his hand raised.
I mean, look at some of the guys Matthews has been in there with. James Vick, Kevin Lee. I mean, he's been in there with some real guys. Beat Emil Meek. That was no – I mean, I think at the end of the day, it had to be Matthews or pass. The problem now is you're not getting that plus 210 anymore. You're getting plus 175. And at some point, and maybe I'm already there because when I was looking this morning at plus 200 even still, I was like, it's Matthews for sure. I'm going to bet Matthews today. Before I go back to the other place tonight. And now it's even lower. So I guess at some point, if you like the favorite here, keep waiting because this thing's done nothing but drop. And if you like Matthews, unfortunately, you missed the best numbers. It's kind of in a tricky spot. And we're only on Monday of fight week. So maybe this thing has some fluctuation left in it.
Lots of week left to go, but yeah, it has been all Matthews money, and honestly, it kind of surprises me, Matt, because generally speaking, you'd think the public would be on the undefeated guy, right? You would think the public would be on the guy that has come out and done nothing but win in front of us. Matthews has been, I don't want to say less than impressive, but he hasn't blown anybody away. And he just got through with Diego Sanchez, which, like you said, he dominated every second of that fight, which is exactly what he's supposed to do.
Jingliang Li looks like a good win right now.
That looks like a great win right now.
Yeah. I mean, everyone wants to rip every win. I think if you looked at these two resumes, the most impressive win by either guy is Matthews' win over Jingliang Li.
I would agree. I think my only issue with that, though, is that was back in 2018. I find it strange that the money is all coming in on Matthews right now. Maybe it swings back the other way when the public starts getting involved on, Thursday, Friday, when it's a little closer to fight time. And maybe this is actually just sharp money. But I have a hard time with this one. I do think at the end of the day, the wrestling and the strength of Brady is going to make the difference. So I'm going to pick him to win. But unless I can get my number, unless I can get him all the way down at minus 140, minus 150, something like that, I'm definitely not going to be betting this guy.
Yeah. And again, if I can't get Matthews plus 200, I don't want any part of it. I'll just be watching.
It's going to be a fun one to watch, too. This one will be very exciting. I'm curious what's going to happen, because a lot of times when fighters have the same skill set, when they have the same style, they end up doing battle in the lesser skill set. So we might end up with a 15-minute striking battle since both these guys are so good on the ground.
One at a time, one strike at a time kickboxing match.
Yep. It'll be just another Jairzinho versus Cyril Gane.
Yeah.
Hopefully not. All right. So we have got 413 live viewers. Thank you all so much for jumping in here this evening. We're getting closer. I want that 500. Everybody make sure you smash that like button for me. Do me a favor. I'm joined by my special guest, Matt Holt, the president of U.S. Integrity, one of our favorite guests here on the podcast. This is odds.com and the Diehard MMA podcast, breaking down UFC 259 from a betting perspective. So if we don't give an exact pick, that's why. And everybody, don't forget, we're doing this on Monday. We've got a whole week. There's a lot of times for opinion to change. So if we pass on something, that doesn't mean we're not going to bet it a little bit later. Next up, we've got a light heavyweight fight, Kennedy Nzechukwu, that is a difficult name to say. We'll just call him Kennedy, against Carlos Ulberg. Very, very intriguing fight here to me. Kennedy is 7-1, trains out of Fortis MMA. This dude came in hot. He came in, we were expecting a lot from him. He was vaunted as one of these power strikers, one of these super athletes that Fortis has been putting out recently. And he's been a little underwhelming so far, I guess, in the UFC. He's done what he needed to do, but he has not impressed, and he's fought a relatively low level of competition. He got submitted by my boy Paul Craig, which love to see that. I love Paul Craig. Anytime that guy gets a win, I'm good to go. And then he had a disappointing decision win over Darko Stosic, a guy that's no longer with the organization, and a fight that I think there was an argument he could have lost. Now he's taking on Carlos Ulberg, who is the new hot thing out of City Kickboxing, the newest member to come into the UFC. He's only 5-0 as a professional fighter. And the experience edge you've got to give to Kennedy just because he's been around a whole lot longer. Carlos has a kickboxing background, though, so he's no stranger to combat sports or anything like that. He's a big power striker. My only problem with Carlos is that he swings wild. The hooks that he throws, he leaves his chin wide open, but if he connects, he can bink anybody out of there. And this guy likes to throw spinning attacks, big clinch knees. He's very, very flashy in there. And I honestly feel like Carlos Ulberg is a guy that can pretty much shut down Kennedy on the feet. I don't know that the plodding meat and potatoes, predictable striking of Kennedy is going to be enough to get past Carlos Ulberg here. What do you think, Matt?
I actually have a feeling this one may come out a little bit on fire, but could turn into a little bit of a boring fight. These guys both tend to be a little bit low volume, and they tend to stand around looking at their opponents, looking for one big shot. I will say this, though. Those City Kickboxing guys, for whatever reason, whenever it's Adesanya at the top, and he loves to stack the City Kickboxing guys all the way through, they tend to come out and fire a little more. So I don't know that I want to get in front of Ulberg here. If anything else, it feels like the UFC wants to promote this guy. He's going to be the aggressor in this fight. Let's at least admit this. We know he's probably going to be the aggressor in this fight.
Absolutely. You got to think so. And I've got a good question here in the chat. Do I have a rule on betting 3-0 fighters? No. The rule is try to avoid
usually bet against them.
It is usually bet against them, exactly. The experience edge is something that we always like to factor in and we definitely want to take advantage of. But I'm not impressed with Kennedy. I don't want to line up behind this guy. And the other thing is City Kickboxing is really pumping out some of the best athletes we've ever seen. Matt, I don't know if you recall, but about a year ago at this point, I did a City Kickboxing parlay that at the time paid 7-1 because nobody knew who these boys were. It was the night that Israel Adesanya got the strap put around his waist. And now you can't do that anymore because every single City Kickboxing fighter is minus 250 or higher. You're never going to get a good number on those boys. So I have to respect City Kickboxing. I think Carlos is going to be the harder hitter of the two. And it wouldn't surprise me if he clipped Kennedy with something because that's all he's shown that he can do so far. But at the same time, that wild striking and the lack of experience in the MMA realm, Kennedy might introduce him. You know what I mean? He might end up pinned up against the fence. He might end up on his back in a wrestling match and be in a spot that he just wasn't prepared for in a place that he's never been before. And because of that, because we just don't know what Carlos is going to do outside of that striking realm against an opponent that has more experience than him, I got to pass. It's an unfortunate situation, again, that I'm picking Carlos to win this fight, but I can't bet him at this price tag.
Yeah, me neither. And the Portis guys are good in the clinch, and they tend to be good on the ground. There's a lot of tough ground guys over there. So what happens if, Carlos doesn't get him out of there in the first, couple of minutes, and then all of a sudden it gets a little bit slow and you get stuck up in the clinch and gosh forbid it goes to the ground for a few minutes. He could certainly gas out. We've never seen him go long. His Dana White Contender Series fight didn't make it out of the first either, I don't think. The Bruno Silveira fight, I think it was just a couple of minutes. So, yeah, this one's tricky. It's probably going to be a pass for me.
Yeah. I'm trying to find it here on my card because I'm curious what that over looks like here in this fight because that may
1.5
not be a
over
bad
minus
look.
50.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I saw before I hopped on was 1.5 rounds over 50.
Okay. That's not so bad. I mean, it's a little pricier than I'd like when you've got guys that throw as hard as these two do. But maybe that's the look. It might be a spot like the heavyweights the other night where they respect one another's power a little bit too much and they just kind of refuse to engage.
Yeah, that's very possible. Kennedy's kind of that fighter anyway. He looks for that perfect shot.
He does. And that's where I think Carlos is going to probably be the aggressor. He'll be the one willing to bite down and swing first. And that's kind of what concerns me a little bit.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so we're going to go ahead and say Carlos on that one. We'll say over 1.5, but from a betting perspective, so far, neither of us have any action here. Next up, we got a flyweight fight. Tim Elliott taking on Jordan Espinosa. Believe it or not, this is the end of the early prelims. We still have a whole preliminary card to get to after this before the main card. Tons of fights. Super excited. Ready to go. Matt, I'm going to let you lead this one off. How do you feel about Tim Elliott and Jordan Espinosa here?
It's interesting that both fights you let me lead off are the ones I have bets on so far out of the early prelims, Bautista and Tim Elliott. I love Tim Elliott in this spot. We're talking about two guys who are both 1-3 in their last 4, except unlike Espinosa, Tim Elliott's losses are against 3 of the best guys in the MMA division, the champ, Askarov, who's probably the next title challenger after Moreno Figueiredo 2, and Brandon Royval, who we know is a complete beast. And that was a pretty impressive win. Last fight. Ryan Benoit is no joke. That's a pretty tough dude. On the other side, Jordan Espinosa also 1-3 in his last 4. The win over Mark De La Rosa. Mark De La Rosa at this point, I think we can all assume isn't really UFC competition. Losses to Matt Schnell. He got subbed by both Matt Schnell and Alex Perez. What does Tim Elliott do to guys when he's really on? He submits them. I just think that Tim Elliott is 2 levels above this guy on the ground, and he's going to catch him in something. Tim Elliott by submission. I'm playing Tim Elliott at a plus price. I don't know how that happened, but suddenly Tim Elliott's the underdog in this fight after opening the favorite. I'm playing Tim Elliott at a plus and Tim Elliott by submission.
The answer to that question, Abu Dhabi, my friend, is me. I would bet this fight. I couldn't agree with you more, Matt. I love Tim Elliott in this spot. There are very, very few times that I look ahead. And this was one that I circled on my calendar. And when the book dropped a minus 115 on Tim Elliott, I hit it for 2.3 units to win 2. I love this spot for him. I love the opponent for him. I love the camp change to glory. I love James Krause taking over. I love this Tim Elliott 2.0 that's coming out. And the craziest thing is I completely misread this line. I never expected the line to go the other direction. And that's something I'm still working on. But I know there's not a lot of love out there for Tim Elliott. Maybe I should have expected that. I would love to get plus 105 right now on Tim Elliott, but I'm already 2.3 units deep on it, so I'm not sure I'm going to add more unless it gets out of control on the other side of this thing. But I also love your read on the submission prop. I mean, Jordan Espinosa, this guy's a machine. He's full of muscle, and he gasses out. He slows down as the fight goes on. That's a problem that he's always had. He uses that athleticism, and if he can't get his opponent out of there early, he just fades. And he's only got 2 UFC wins. Mark De La Rosa and Eric Shelton. Both of those guys are cut. Neither of those guys are in the UFC anymore. And I know Tim Elliott's looked bad his last couple of fights, but besides that little rough patch that he had where he admitted fully to I think he was drinking a lot. He was partying a lot. He wasn't taking his training seriously. Now that he's redoubled down and his wife has also doubled down on their training with Glory MMA and James Krause, both of them look like brand new people. I'm all over Tim here. I loved him for this spot. He's a zombie on the feet. He's impossible to knock out. His submission defense is off the charts. I keep going back to the story. I lost a crap ton of money before the podcast wasn't even a twinkle in my eye, Matt, and I was betting on Demetrius Johnson inside the distance the night he fought Tim Elliott, and Tim Elliott survived that damn fight and cost me a bundle because he's just so good on the floor. Jordan Espinosa is not knocking him out. Jordan Espinosa is not submitting him. The only thing Espinosa might be able to do is grind out a 15-minute decision, and I don't think he's a good enough grappler to do it, and I don't think he's got a good enough gas tank to do it. The other thing is, again, shout out to my boy James Lynch. Jordan Espinosa did an interview with him where he talked about catching COVID. Part of the reason he's been gone so long is he had a really bad case of COVID, and we've seen people have cardio issues and lung issues when they come back from these long COVID breaks. I don't know how else I can say it. I loved Tim Elliott here, and I got a big bet on him on Saturday.
I was there that night. He fought Demetrius Johnson here in Vegas at the Pearl, and I was at that fight. And I'll tell you, Tim Elliott had a lot of fans in attendance that night, coming off winning that season of Tough in order to get his title shot. And he had Demetrius Johnson in a guillotine in the second round. I thought DJ was going to tap in the arena. I thought, oh my gosh, that is super tight. DJ's about to tap, and Tim Elliott and the Tie-Dye Nation are about to be wearing the strap. And it didn't end up getting done. DJ went on to win a decision. But this guy, all he does is lose to the very best guys in the world. The former champ, the current champ, the future champ, Brandon Royval. He only loses to the most elite guys. Espinosa's never even been in there with these guys yet. I love Tim Elliott.
Now, Matt, you were there? You were in the arena that night?
Yeah.
That's so
Pearl
crazy.
With the Palms, baby. The Pearl.
I was
with the Palms.
too. I watched that one live, man. I was right there in the building for it.
I was sitting up against the barrier. There's the second level of the Pearl.
Yeah.
So when you sit on the second level, you're like looking down on the octagon almost. I was right on the rail, like one section over from Tim Elliott's little Tie-Dye Nation crew that was all up there.
That's hilarious. We passed by like 2 ships in the night that day. I was down on the main floor in like the very back row because At that time, I wasn't paying for front row seats or anything like that. Me and my best friend were way deep on the alcohol for the night, and I had a paper ticket that I was in there looking to get right on the weekend on DJ, and he let me down.
It was an awesome card. I mean, Joseph Benavidez, Henry Cejudo was on that
was
card.
So sick.
Super fun card. Yeah, it was a great fight.
Oh, that's too funny. All right. Good times. Gil Scott, I saw your comment. I will bring that up to odds and see if maybe that's something they're interested in. That's not a bad idea. Thank you very much for the suggestion. That does it for the early prelims. We're headed on to the preliminary card. This is odds.com. I am Clint from the Diehard MMA podcast, and my guest, Matt Holt, joining us, the president of US Integrity. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us. We have got 463 live viewers, if you can believe it. We're knocking on that door. Everybody smash the like button. Give me a share over on Twitter. I want to see a 500. That's what I'm looking for tonight. I want to see 500 live when we get to that main card. So what we've got coming up here. Oh, you know what? Now's a good time. I want to go ahead and plug Goat Capital Sports. My other sponsor, GoatCapitalSports.com, at GoatCapital_ on Twitter. If you're not feeling the MMA, or if you need some help with all the other sports out there, they offer very low prices, good price packaging, and they give you picks for all the other sports, including golf. They nailed the golf winner 2 weeks ago for a gigantic score. So make sure you check out GoatCapitalSports.com. And on top of that, they have a risk-free program where if they happen to lose that week, you get refunded for your membership price. So good deal. All right. Next up, we got a fight that, again, I keep saying this. I'm going to say this all night. You guys are going to get sick of hearing it. I'm so excited for this fight. Flyweight battle between Rogerio Bontorin and Kai Kara-France. Bontorin is 16-2. Kai Kara-France is one of the staples, one of the standouts from city kickboxing. Bontorin is very aggressive. He swings big at close range, big clinch knees. He's got strong wrestling, great grappling, and he's one of these guys that can lift his opponent up over his head. You know, he takes them down by sheer brute force, and he's almost impossible to stop. Slams people. He transitions seamlessly to the back, very quick, very efficient. And if you manage to get on top of him, he's extremely dangerous off his back as well. This guy's sneaky. He's got a win over Paiva, which, you know, it's funny, Matt. I've called that win fluky. I've said that win. The cut,
right? Yeah, the cut.
Yeah, that was the one. I've said that was a bad win. I mean, I'm high on Paiva, and I've gone back a couple times and said, you know, that was a crap win. He should have gotten out of that. But when you really go back and look, Bontorin lands a clean shot and busts Paiva wide open. I thought it happened when he slammed him. I thought it was a freak accident, you know, just a moment when he put him on the ground. Now, obviously, cuts aren't something that you can be too impressed with. Cuts aren't something, you know, they're random. It's not something that you can count on unless you're Tony Ferguson and you're, you know, slicing and dicing people with the elbows. But he opened that cut. That wasn't some fluke. It wasn't some freak accident. He hit this guy so hard, he busted him wide open, and he deserved the stoppage. It was a terrible, terrible cut. So I kind of had to walk back what I thought on that one after reviewing the tape. The only issue with Bontorin is his last fight, he got absolutely overpowered by Ray Borg. If you remember, that's the fight where Borg just missed weight, and the UFC said no more flyweight for you. You can't compete at flyweight anymore because you just can't make the weight. So he was in there against a guy who has the same skill set as him, just way bigger. And you're never going to win that matchup. So he's coming off of that fight, and he's taking on Kai Kara-France, a guy that's got extremely technical striking, heavy hands, willing to swing and trade in the pocket, and in my opinion, has a bit of a padded record. I think he actually lost his fight to Julian Paiva. In my opinion, Kai Kara-France should be 3-3 in the UFC instead of being 4-2. And on top of that, Kai Kara-France is making a quick turnaround. He's coming off 5 months after the loss to Brandon Royval. And if anybody knows, it shows that Kai Kara-France got submitted that night. But what really happened is that Royval kicked his ass, and then he choked him out once it hit the ground. Like he got on a standing guillotine and choked him out after he got destroyed by clinched knees and the long rangy kicks of Brandon Royval. Honestly, we've seen Kai Kara-France wobbled in almost every single fight that he's been in. And when fighters take that kind of damage, when they take that kind of heat, I like them to take 9+ months off for them to fully recover and heal. And now he's coming in here against Bontorin, a guy that's going to test him and a guy that can bomb on him. If he wants to go blow for blow in the pocket, I think it could look a whole heck of a lot like when Pedro Munoz took out the paper chin champion with them just swinging down in the pocket. I think Bontorin can clip him. This is another spot where I'm taking the dog. I think this line is a little bit too wide. I think people don't know who Bontorin is. And I think for maybe the first time, we're getting some value because the city kickboxing flag is making this line a bit too wide. What do you think about this one?
I 100% agree with you. I actually like him a lot too. And you and I were both on Brandon Royval against Kai Kara-France. And what I think's interesting here is Kai Kara-France came into the UFC with this reputation as a devastating knockout artist at 125. All 4 of his wins in the UFC are by decision. He's never scored a knockout win in the UFC by decision. I do think he's a very good technical striker, and he does have power for 125. But not huge power. He hasn't knocked anybody out in the UFC at 125. And I'm with you. I think he should be 3-3. But because he carries that city kickboxing name and has a fan-friendly style, I think he tends to get a lot more respect than he deserves. And I'm on the dog here as well at around the plus 130, plus 135 range.
I like it. I'm glad to hear that you and I ended up on the same side as that one. I felt like I might be off on an island. And I got to tell you, Matt, when Twitter makes me feel like I'm off on an island, I usually do pretty well. But my respected guests, I like to agree with. This is
I don't mind being on the opposite side of Twitter.
Exactly. So I put 2 units on it, Matt. I feel like the wrong fighter might be favored here. I feel like at worst, this is a pick'em. I feel like this is an even money spot. I know Kai Kara-France has really great takedown defense, but then I kind of went back and I looked at the tail of the tape and I'm like, who's he really defended takedowns from? You know, he's not fought anybody who really struggled to get him to the floor. I mean, he got beat up by Brandon Moreno, which we know how good Brandon Moreno is now. He got beat up by Brandon Royval, 2 guys that I would be respectful of their takedown prowess, except both of them decided to piece him up on the feet instead of taking it to the mat. Tyson Nam, who's never shot a takedown in his life, and then Mark De La Rosa, who's cut. And again, I think he lost the fight to Julian Paiva. That was mostly a striking fight. And then the Elias Garcia fight, which he's another guy who hasn't fought since the Kai Kara-France fight back in 2018, may not even be in the UFC anymore. We don't even know at this point. I haven't seen anything about him being cut, but who knows who he is? Who is Elias Garcia at this point? Yeah. So I feel like Kai Kara-France is maybe a little bit fraudulent. I don't think he's deserving of this line, and I think that people just don't know who Rogerio Bontorin is. I put 2 units on him. I got another big shot here at the underdog.
Yeah, and I don't blame you. I think the underdog's definitely the look here. I wouldn't be surprised if we get closer to fight night. This one is going to interest me where the line goes because the city kickboxing guys tend to get money fight week when Adesanya is up top. So I'm not sure if waiting is the best or get it now. I felt this morning like you should probably get it now because this dog's going to be the sharp side. But they tend to always bet the city kickboxing guys. So it's going to be interesting to see where this one ends up.
So first off, we hit 500. We got 505 live viewers. Y'all did it. What's up? Thank you very much for spending your Monday night with us. Let's go. It's been a while since we've hit that number. I am pumped up. I couldn't agree more with you, Matt, though. The problem for me, though, so far, we were right to get in early. It looks like Bontorin's already down to plus 115. I have no idea. I wish I had gotten in earlier at that plus 140 price tag, plus 145 price tag, but it looks like we might be on the sharp side here because you're absolutely right. They love the city kickboxing. I think money's going to come back on Kai Kara-France, especially when people see him as a minus 130 or minus 140. I think it's going to flood back the other direction. So if you missed the boat, you can probably get a better line by fight time. I still don't hate it at plus 115 or plus 120. I still think it's a dog spot, so go for it. But honestly, I'm terrible at reading line movement, so I'm not sure which way this is going to swing. I like the dog. I'm taking the dog, and let's go. All right. Yeah, that's right. All right. We got to highlight the chat here. Everybody getting pumped up. We got it. We're all over it. We got that 500 party in the chat here. How's everybody doing? All right. Next up, we've got another flyweight fight. The little guy's going to war this week after a bunch of cards with heavyweights on them. We've got Joey B. Benavidez making his return to the cage, and he's taking on Askarov. Joseph Benavidez, just a staple of the UFC at this point. 28-7, a ton of experience. Askarov, 12-0-1, just the draw, the only blemish on his undefeated record. The new hotness of the division, trying to get close to a title. Matt, I'll let you kick this one off. What are you doing here?
Look, I went with the new hotness, and I laid the $1.25. I have 2 units on Askarov. I just think Joseph Benavidez put his heart and soul into those 2 title shots of Figueiredo were his last shot. And even after he got his ass whooped in the first fight. And he was able to make an excuse, right? Well, he missed weight and he was too big and there was the headbutt. No, you just got jacked up. And then he got jacked up even worse the second time. And at this point, Joseph Benavidez, I think, is 0-5 now in UFC title fights? It's just bad. He just can't get the job done there. And unless there's a new champion, he's probably not going to get another title fight. And I just don't know if his head's going to be in it right away. We saw him after the DJ fights kind of have a couple fights where he slipped up and then he got back on track. This feels like a spot where Benavidez may not be heart and soul into his training for this one. And Askarov's a killer. I mean, this guy's only blemish in the UFC's 2-0-1 is a draw to Brandon Bam Bam Moreno, who, by the way, is fighting for the title again in his next fight. So that's not exactly a bad draw. And he has a win over Alexander Pantoja, who we just saw have an amazing win. That win's only aging well again. This guy's for real. He's already been in there with 2 top 5 flyweights in the world, handled himself very well in both. So while he may not have as much experience as Benavidez, he's been in there with killers already. He's made that walk to the octagon against killers. I like Askarov here a lot.
Well, once again, Matt, it always floors me when you and I approach a fight the exact same way. I'm with you here. I'm on Askarov, and this was the second fight. If you remember, I said there were a couple fights I was looking for, that I was looking ahead on. Askarov versus Joey B. As soon as they lined this one up, I snagged Askarov at plus 100 like a month ago.
Wow.
I knew that this thing was going to go the other way, and I felt the wrong man was favored. Look, Joseph Benavidez, I don't have a bad thing to say about the guy. How could you? Yeah. He's nice. He's professional. He is incredible, but he's always the bridesmaid, never the bride. He's on the short list of fighters, greatest fighters to never have that UFC belt put around their waist. And you know what happens when those guys say one last run? I got one more in me. You know, look at Alistar over him. You put together a good run, a good set of wins, and you're thinking, I'm knocking on the door of that title shot again. And then you get one little step up in competition and you get flatlined. That's the nail in the coffin. That tells you you will never be the UFC champion. You are never going to get there. Because if they come back saying one last run after they just said one last run, they're lying to themselves. And like you said, when you realize, okay, so I'm never going to be champion, I'm never going to achieve my life's ambition, are you working as hard? Do you train as hard when you're at that moment where you could dig deep or you could tap? Are you really going to go for it? You know, in training, when the young, hungry kid is pushing you up against the wall, are you just going to give in to the takedown that day because, at the end of the day, you know how to defend a takedown. It doesn't really matter. You know, I think there's a decent chance of a slump here from Joseph Benavidez. And on top of that, he's been wobbly for a long time. Joe Benavidez is a guy that's extremely hittable because of the way that he fights, and he's at that age where you start to pay for that. Askarov is a better wrestler than Joe is, and that's always been the ace up the sleeve of Joe Benavidez, is he can grapple people if he needs to. That's not going to be here. He's not going to out-grapple Askarov. He's not going to out-scramble Askarov. This dude is legit on the ground. And the thing people don't seem to realize, Askar's got more bomb in his hands than people give him credit for. This guy can swing with the best of them. And I think that Askarov has an outside shot of actually sending Joe B back out on, looking up at the ceiling. I think if they get in the pocket and trade, if Joe decides to crash in again and leave his chin open the way he has his entire career, he's just begging for a big shot from Askarov, and I think he can get put down again. I like the spot that I got at plus 100. The short favorite line is where it should be, so minus 130 is about where it's at right now. I don't see a problem with that. I like Askarov. Take him. I think he's winning on Saturday. And honestly, I know he's a decision machine type of guy, but I'm maybe sprinkling a little bit on Askarov by knockout.
Yeah, and he's only a decision guy to your point because he's a 125er. He actually pops for that weight.
He does. He absolutely does. And, we've got a total here at 2.5. Everybody make sure you keep an eye on odds.com. I do a show called Total Madness where I go over everything, not from the side perspective, but from the totals perspective a little later on in the week. So I'm going to give a little way here, but this under 2.5 may not be a bad spot. With these lighter guys, you see them go over more often than not simply because, like you said, they're the lighter guys. They're smaller. They don't hit as hard. They're not as explosive as some of the big guys. But Joe Benavidez has been the exception to that rule. Joe's the guy that can hit hard enough. He can crack, and he can get people out of there. But by the same token, these days, Joe's a bit chinny. Joe might be open to getting cracked. Joe might be open to getting KO'd. I think this under is live, and at plus 170, plus 180, the under 2.5. I mean, I'm already on Askarov, so I don't think I'm going to play this one. But if you're looking for a spot and you don't necessarily like the side, under 2.5 at plus 180 is not a bad little dice roll.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And at 36 years old, look, one of the first things to go is the chin, and he just got knocked out 2 fights ago.
By the God of War.
Yeah.
Come back from that knockout, back to back. I want to see what that chin is made of after being KO'd twice by Davison Figueiredo.
Yeah.
Yeah, and here, my boy Zabel in the chat. Askarov nearly KO'd Elliott, and we know Elliott doesn't get knocked out. Askar had him on skates that night. So looking over at the line, just so people have an idea, Askarov inside the distance is plus 435 right now. Now, here's the thing. Joe Benavidez doesn't get submitted. I'm not going to take that because I think I'll get a ridiculous line on the knockout. And even if it's just like a quarter unit or something like that, I'm going to toss a little sprinkle on that knockout because it's going to be a ridiculous line. And at the end of the day, I think it's reasonable for that to actually come on through.
Yeah, and Askarov isn't getting submitted either. So if you're going to, rather than just play the under, which is a good, you're going to get a good plus, like plus 170 on the under, you're better off taking the KO props because that's how this is going to end if it ends early.
Exactly. Some books have that, fight ends by knockout, something like that. That would cover you for both sides if you wanted to do that instead of the under. That might even be a better price tag. We got another exciting fight coming up here. Bantamweight tilt between Song Yadong taking on Kyler Phillips. Song Yadong 16-4. Kyler is 8-1, and he is the new hotness, Matt. There's a lot of that going around this week. I posted a picture a little earlier on Twitter that, boys, if your girl doesn't watch UFC, if she refuses to sit on the couch and watch MMA with you, this is the week. There's some bods. Dana White was like, Sean Shelby, I need the numbers of the women to go up. And he's like, I got you, bro. I got you. There's some good-looking man meat rolling around in there this week. Kyler Phillips rocking the long hair and the beard coming out of Arizona, the MMA lab. This is only his 3rd UFC fight, though. So very, very exciting young prospect, flashy striking. He's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage. He throws the spinning heel kick to the body to soften people up, flying knees. He's an excellent grappler, and he's got these nice, smooth transitions, good timing on his level changes, and he's got some nasty ground and pound. So far, he's averaged 6.28 significant strikes per minute, which is a ridiculous work rate here. Song Yadong, team alpha male prospect, kind of carrying the flag at this point. Alpha male doesn't have much going for them these days, but this kid is legit. He is big for bantamweight, extremely physically strong, good footwork, sharp, accurate boxing. He's got a nice jab that he sticks out there, strong wrestling. He was able to out-wrestle Cody Stamann. If any of you follow UFC, you know just how impressive it is that someone was able to physically overpower Cody Stamann. And when he's got you hurt, he'll flurry up against the cage. He'll strike in combination and really likes to mix in body shots to break his opponents down. This guy is real, Matt. I like Song Yadong, and in my opinion, he's a dark horse in the division. Have you done anything on this fight?
No, when I looked at last time I looked this morning, it was 160, which I thought was a little steep on Song Yadong, but I would only look to that side. I think his experience level is so far beyond what Kyler Phillips brings. And, I went back this past week and I was looking back through some fights and watched the Marlon Vera fight because I remember the first time I watched it thinking, boy, he faded bad. And Marlon Vera was really coming on. But I didn't actually think he faded that bad in the third. I thought his gas tank held up okay. Yes, Marlon Vera won round 3, but Marlon Vera is a lot to handle and has cardio for days and always comes on late. The Stamann fight was really impressive. I mean, this guy's resume is just really impressive. He's beaten some tough dudes, Yadong Song. Vince Morales, Alejandro Perez, Felipe Aranche. For me, it's going to be favorite or pass here. And I was even interested in the under. I thought, if you look at some of Song Yadong's fights, including the Vera fight, boy, he comes out on fire and bangs a little bit harder than people give him credit for. And if Kyler Phillips comes out and tries to bang with him early, I could see actually one of them really connecting in the first round of this fight. So at plus 150 on the under 2.5, that was certainly a possibility. I haven't played the fight yet, but for me, it's either going to be Song Yadong or maybe under 2.5.
Okay. So once again, we're kind of lining up here, Matt. I didn't even think about the under 2.5, but given your reasoning, I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. This is a spot though that I think the bookies got it right. Song Yadong opened up around minus 200. He was like a minus 190, minus 200 favorite, depending on where you got him. And it's been all love for Kyler Phillips. I think this is another spot where the new hotness is really starting to get to people. We've seen how flashy and exciting this guy is. And don't get me wrong, I'm excited about Kyler Phillips too. Maybe not the same way my wife is, but I think this guy's got a future in the UFC. And Song is a guy that, in my opinion, has just been continuously disrespected. When you get a guy like Song Yadong who's got that high-level power wrestling, it's exactly like Cody Stamann. You can't submit the guy. You can't knock the guy out. And eventually he's going to get his mitts on you and take you down. And don't forget, we're in the UFC Apex. We're in that small cage. So because of that, I definitely lean with the favorite here. And honestly, I liked him a little while ago. I'm waiting. Now, we've got 560 live viewers right now. I got to pull this out. If you're riding with me, if you like Song Yadong, don't bet it yet. We got to wait. Be patient. Show some restraint. Because if we can get Song Yadong around minus 130, that's a home run to me. I have no problems standing in front of the world and waiting against this line movement, seeing all the money pouring in on everybody, thinking that the underdog is just going to roll through this champion caliber fighter that's been battle tested in the UFC. I've got no problem planting my flag and taking the guy that I think deserves to be the favorite. And I'm going to take Song Yadong. If I have to pay minus 150 for him, if that's as low as the line is going to go, I will. But I think with all the love coming in on the other side, I think we might get as low as minus 130 or minus 125. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going to wait for this line to crash as low as possible, and then I'm going to buy in on Song Yadong.
I like that. I think you're right. I think the longer we wait, the better it's going to get.
I love it. My boy Locker Room with me here, buying in at minus 142. All right. Another one that we just kind of tend to agree on here, Matt. It's a good night. It's a good night. I like when we line up. I feel like we usually do pretty well when we're on the same page. So hopefully a good sign for Saturday. We've got the last fight on the preliminary card here, one that there's a lot to talk about. Bantamweight fight between former champion, one of the all-time greats, Dominick Cruz, taking on Casey Kenney. And again, it's a passing of the torch. It's the old and busted versus the new hotness. Casey Kenney has been doing absolutely everything we could ask him to. He's been just proving himself at every single turn. I am beyond impressed with everything Casey Kenney has done. And it's not like a couple of the other examples that we've given. Casey Kenney, at this point, he's got 6 UFC fights, and his only loss was Merab freaking Dvalishvili. And he gave Merab a fight that night, Matt. If you recall, that was probably one of the toughest nights Merab has had because he just couldn't keep his hands on this kid, and he was eating shots every single time he got a hold of him. Dominick Cruz, we all know Dom. This guy ruled over the division with an iron fist, and he's the one guy that was able to come back from the worst injury, from the longest layoff, and still showed that he was elite, took the title back, and then he damn near did it again. So he came out, he's on a 2-fight losing streak. Cody Garbrandt and Henry Cejudo at this point, the inactivity, the injuries on his body just mounting up, keeping him out of the cage. He's trying to put some work together here towards the end stages of his career. Do you have a move on this one, Matt? What are you planning on doing?
This is probably the hardest fight for me to get a read on, and part of the reason is, Dominick Cruz has only fought twice since 2016. How do you get a read on a guy who's fought twice in 5 years? And in the first one of those, he looked really bad against Cody. His timing was off. He was slow. I mean, that was Cody Garbrandt's pinnacle, right? I mean, the domination of Dominick Cruz, because he didn't just beat Dominick, he dominated him. Continued to knock him down time after time. And then against Cejudo, I thought Cruz was looking really good until he got cracked right at the end of the round. And then, of course, we know Dominick says, they shouldn't have stopped the fight, but it is what it is. He did get cracked at the end of the round. I don't know that Casey Kenney has that one-punch crack, but I know that he's the new hot thing right now. But one fight ago, a lot of people were betting against him with Nathaniel Wood. They were like, oh, Nathaniel Wood, we love this guy, his length at the division. And then Casey Kenney whips him, and everybody loves Casey Kenney. So I don't know what to do because it feels like you're not getting a bargain on Casey Kenney. But at the end of the day, it's really hard to back Dominick Cruz. 2 fights in 5 years, and they were both losses.
Yeah. And it's so funny that you brought that up because I feel like that Cejudo-Cruz fight is such a split. I mean, even in the chat right now, we've got people saying how Cruz wasn't winning against Cejudo, and then other people saying that Cruz was dominating until he got caught. Like, people are viewing that fight completely polar opposite of one another. It's so hard to get a read on where Dominick Cruz is at right now. It's a 3-round fight. Dominick might be able to come out and do what he does. But honestly, if there's any guy in the UFC that does what Dom does, it's Kenney. The footwork on this kid, the speed, the movement, he might be able to do kind of what Cody Garbrandt did back in the day and beat Cruz at his own game. And then it may not be something that we see often. Kenney's only got 2 knockouts. But like if you saw when he knocked out Vince Cachero, that was a flying knee that came out of nowhere. He can time those type of moves. If he gets the feel for Dominick Cruz's movement, don't count big shots out. They're on the table. It's few and far between. It's rare, but they are completely possible. I took the stab on Casey Kenney. I got -120 on Casey Kenney. It's not a spot that I am absolutely in love with or anything like that. We beat a bit of a line movement. It looks like Casey Kenney's about -135, -140. I'm seeing a -150 pop up. May start looking a little wide. If the line keeps on going the direction that it is, I wouldn't be paying -160 for Casey Kenney. I wouldn't be paying -175 for Casey Kenney. If you missed the good number, just let it go. There's plenty of other spots to bet on this week. So don't overpay for a guy like Kenney in a fight where it could be extremely close. If you got that short number on Kenney, I like it. But it's starting to get to the point from a betting perspective that I feel like it's a dog or pass.
I'm with you. If this line keeps going, it will be a dog or pass, and I don't want to take the dog, so I hope it just stays where it is.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where, for me, I'm going to find myself in a bit of a weird spot. Now, I only ever hedge out on fights when I feel like maybe I'm wrong. When I get that spider sense, that little tingling on the back of my neck that lets me know I made a mistake, that's when I hedge out. Or if the weigh-in somebody comes in and just has an awful cut and looks like garbage, I'll hedge out then. But this is the kind of spot where I got -125, and if Casey goes off as a -200 favorite, I can throw a unit on Dominick Cruz later in the week at +175 I don't think it'll get there. I don't think it'll get quite that far, but this would be an interesting spot to be kind of free rolling and not caring who comes out on top in the end.
Yeah, that's not a bad one.
All right. That is it for the preliminary card, folks. We're headed on to the main card. This is UFC Vegas 259, the most stacked card of the year. We've got 569 live viewers. Thank you all so much for spending time with us this evening. This is odds.com. This is the Diehard MMA podcast. I am your boy, Clint, bringing my hammers to work today. We are joined by Matt Holt, the president of US Integrity, and we appreciate each and every one of you being in the chat with us tonight. Do me a favor. I know you're sick of hearing it. Just smash the like button for me. We got a ton of viewers. Takes you no time at all. We're about to get into the goods, so give us that thumbs up. We've got a light heavyweight fight kicking us off here, Matt. I'm going to let you lead this one off. Thiago Santos returning to the cage, taking on the streaking new hotness, Aleksandar Rakic, in a theme for UFC 259. What are you doing on this one?
Look, Rakic is huge. 6'5", 5-1 in the UFC with wins over Anthony Smith, Jimmy Manua, Devin Clark, and only lost a split decision loss to former title challenger Volkan Oezdemir. And when I was looking at this fight, my original thought was Santos at 37, he's going to go for it early and then probably fade and get knocked out quickly. But at 1.5 rounds, I started to look at the total in this one. And Racic's ability, Racic actually isn't that one strike guy that maybe we all thought he, or at least I thought he was originally. I went back and watched a couple of fights, and Jimmy Manua gets knocked out by everybody. Devin Clark put himself in a position to get knocked out. But when we look at his other UFC fights, Anthony Smith win decision, Justin Ledet decision, Francimar Barrasso decision. Like the way that he fought in most of his fights, if you'll let it, settle into a striking rhythm, he's going to settle into a striking rhythm too. And for that reason, Santos hasn't exactly been uber aggressive lately. He's a guy who's been a counter striker at 37 years old. I took over 1.5 rounds minus 150. If I was forced to play the side, though, I think I would lay $1.70 with Racic. I think at 37 years old, Santos' days as an elite light heavyweight are done. He's just too small, and at 37, he doesn't have the bang he used to. He doesn't have the footwork or the speed he used to. I mean, Glover Teixeira looked fast in that fight. How is that possible? I just think Santos' time is past. I love Thiago Santos. Like anybody who loves MMA loves Thiago Santos. His time is probably past.
All right, so it took us almost all the way through the card for us to finally disagree on a spot here, Matt, but it happened. I took the dog here. I put a 1-unit shot on Thiago Santos. I'm going for it. I honestly feel like he's being a little bit disrespected. Aleksandar Rakic is a guy that I don't like what I see from him, and I don't feel like he's been tested well enough in this type of a spot. So let me break down what I mean here. First off, Thiago Santos, he was this guy that cut himself down to 185 for years. And he finally wisened up and realized he's just too big. He's just too big for 185. Moves up to 205 and looks excellent. I think especially with these bigger men, we see light heavyweights and heavyweights, they have longer careers. They're able to survive longer because their bodies are able to handle, the MMA game, and they can hang on to that power later in their fight. So that's something that I think is I have an okay thing with older fighters at the heavier divisions. I know I avoid fighters who are 40 and older if they're in any division, but he's not quite there yet. We're getting close, but he's not there yet. He's coming off that knee surgery. The Thiago Santos that fought John Jones looked incredible. I mean, we could argue back and forth all day that he potentially deserved to have a belt wrapped around his waist that night when he didn't have knees. Like, he got both of his knees blown out in that fight, and he still came for John Jones and almost got the dang thing done. I think this was a ring rust situation, Matt. The fight with Glover Teixeira was a spot where he hadn't been in the cage in over a year, and he was coming off of knee surgeries. He wasn't sure how he was going to hold up. To me, it looked like he wanted to get out of there with a quick paycheck. He was loading up on shots early. He didn't even try to stop the takedowns. And as we know, Glover Teixeira is one of the craziest freak athletes. That guy can take anything you hit him with. It could be a baseball bat, and he will walk through it and wrap his arms around your waist and drag you to the floor. That's just what old man Glover does. And I got to tell you, I hope he gets his title shot. I want to see a belt wrapped around Glover Teixeira's waist in my lifetime. That would be just a glorious moment for me. But I think that that's an insanely tough test for Santos to come back to, because literally we talk about guys that only get beaten by the elite. Glover Teixeira only gets beaten by the best of the best. He had a weird outlier against Corey Anderson back in 2018, but it was Prime Gustafson. It was Anthony Rumble Johnson who got him early, and then John Jones. Like, his resume is ridiculous. So I don't count the loss against Glover to I don't count that loss to Glover against Teixeira very much.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's tricky.
It's a tricky spot. It is a tricky spot. But that's where I think that this is an inflated line. Because you look at Aleksandar Rakic, and this guy handled Anthony Smith. Smith was only there for a paycheck.
That fight.
Every second of that fight, yes, but it was obvious that Smith was cashing a paycheck that night. He didn't do anything. He laid underneath Rakic. He gave no effort. And really, honestly, just from his mental state, he came back way too soon after a bad situation. Yeah. So I don't buy into that fight whatsoever. He got pieced up by Volkan Oezdemir. Now, that fight is called a split decision. That was Volkan all day, Matt. I'm sorry. He got pieced up by Volkan Oezdemir. He got his legs picked apart. He had that giant hematoma on his shin, if you remember that. And then before that, like you mentioned, with the power, he knocks out Jimmy Manuwa, a guy who has no chin and shouldn't be fighting professionally anymore. And he knocked out Devin Clark, a bottom-of-the-barrel 205er who could possibly be a 185er, who realistically was lighting Rakic up before he got clipped. That was a one-round war that made Devin Clark realize he wanted to go back to wrestling in his next fight. Yeah. I'm not sold with the resume of Aleksandar Rakic, and especially with the way Volkan Oezdemir backed him off with just a couple of leg kicks. Thiago Santos's leg kicks are brutal. I think now that he's got his feet wet, he got that loss out of the way, he knocked the dust off with Glover Teixeira. I don't think that Rakic is going to be able to handle him the way that Glover did. I think a couple of well-timed hard leg kicks when he makes entries is going to turn this into a kickboxing fight. And then I think it's very live for Thiago Santos just to be the one doing more work and landing the harder shots. Now, here's where I'm going to go ahead and put my tinfoil cap on. You ready for this, Matt? Aleksandar Rakic has never been knocked out. Thiago Santos might be just a little bit undersized at 205. So even though he's known for his power, unless he connects with that perfect shot, I don't know that he's going to knock out Rakic. It's on the table. Don't get me wrong. I'm betting the guy. I think he can knock him out. I'm going to put a little sprinkle on Thiago Santos by decision. And that's like plus 525 right now.
Well, he's probably going to have to keep it standing then, because I think if Rakic starts wrestling him, it's going to be too much for the 37-year-old blown-up middleweight.
That may be true. But I think if he follows the game plan from Volkan Oezdemir, I think he can back him off and be available for a striking match here and force this thing into a bit of a brawl. And that's where he does a whole hell of a lot better. Unless Rakic comes out with the game plan of selling out for the takedown, willing to take the heat like Glover did to get in on the legs, which I don't know if he's going to do.
I just think we both had a different impression of watching the Volkan Oezdemir fight, because I thought Rakic, for a lot of the fight, I thought Rakic was the guy coming forward. I'm not saying he was the guy landing the harder shots. I just thought he was the guy pressing forward. Now, he got his leg chopped up. I mean, that's a big part of MMA now. And he wasn't well prepared for it that night. I mean, I feel like anyone who doesn't prepare for calf kicks at this point is crazy, because it is the new lethal weapon in MMA. It won Pedro Munoz the fight this past Saturday.
Absolutely.
Leg kicks are the new big weapon, and he was not prepared that night. But that doesn't mean he won't be prepared to deal with them every night, because as people learn to check them and get better with it, And what is the best way to deal with leg kicks? Start wrestling your opponent. I just have a feeling Rakic is going to wrestle him here. I actually think it's going to be Rakic by boring decision. I think he's going to do a whole lot of holding down the 37-year-old, and he's going to end up winning a fairly uneventful 3-round decision.
You know, you may be right, Matt. And if anybody else sides with you, honestly, I'd feel a whole lot safer playing the over 2.5 at plus 120 than I would just betting on Rakic.
Yeah, I don't hate that part. I don't hate that part at all, because I don't think Rakic is a one-punch power guy, even at 205. The guys he knocked out, to your point, are very chinny. I mean, they both knocked out Jimmy Manua. Yeah, they both knocked out Manua. The wind knocks out Jimmy Manua, so no problem there. I think he's actually going to wrestle him here. I'll be interested to see this one. But I actually think the money's going to show up on Santos, because everyone remembers the Jones fight, and he had a big string of KOs leading up to that. I think the money's going to show on Santos here, and you'll be able to get Rakic really cheap. That's why I think he's going to have to be a play for me.
Okay. Well, we disagree, and as we all know, it's perfectly fine. And
sure, of course,
bookies wouldn't be in business if we didn't disagree on bets, right? So
yeah,
I like the breakdown, and a whole lot of people in the chat calling me out. Trust me, everybody, you're absolutely 1,000% correct. I don't know what it is, but I don't like Aleksandar Rakic. I don't know what it is, but I just continue to poke holes in the guy's resume and what he does, and until he takes somebody on that I can't poke a hole in and comes out with a big win, I'm going to keep fading him when I get the opportunity, because I don't think he's quite what people are making him out to be. So maybe I'm wrong. I've been wrong on prospects before, but I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is. We got 620 live viewers. Thank you all so much for hanging out tonight. That's a podcast record, unless I'm mistaken. I don't think we've ever had 620 live viewers on the show. So thank you all very much for spending your evening with me and my boy Matt here breaking down UFC 259. Next up, we got a lightweight fight. Islam Makhachev taking on Drew Dober. Makhachev 18-1, Drew Dober 23-9. And Matt, I feel like we just watched this fight. This is like when your mom is like, when you tell your mom, you're like, hey mom, I want to watch Justin Gaethje versus Khabib. And she's like, kid, we got Justin Gaethje versus Khabib at home. This is Justin Gaethje versus Khabib at home. It's just one notch down for each guy. We've got Drew Dober training with Gaethje, who's accepted some of those tendencies, you know, a quick, elusive striker, fast hands, good power, heavy leg kicks. I like what I see from Dober, except he's an asshole for being as gorgeous as he is and to have that head of hair. It's just not fair at some points, man. And then Islam Makhachev, a guy I look like I'm related to, is just the grinding wrestling grappler, 68% takedown accuracy, 68% with 3.4 takedowns average per 15 minutes. Those two stats don't go together, Matt. You either average 3.4 takedowns per 15 minutes and you've got like a 25 or 30% accuracy, or you shoot 1 or 2 takedowns and you've got a high accuracy with it. You don't get both. Somehow, this guy has got both. So we're going to get a straight-up grappler who's a pretty damn good striker on the feet when he wants to, against an amazing striker who's got a pretty decent anti-wrestling game. How are you going on this one?
Look, I'm just such a Drew Dober fan. So I'm a little bit of a homer here. I didn't bet on Justin Gaethje against Khabib, but I am betting on Drew Dober here in this one. And just something about Dober ever since he went to Elevation Fight Team and the changes that have gone on there ever since he started there. And I loved the 3-fight KO streak that he's on. I mean, he is just knocking people out. And really, I mean, 6-1 in his last 7, and the only loss to Beneil Dariush. There's not many people more legit than Beneil Dariush right now at 155 pounds. So that resume for Dober is awesome. And this fight is simple. It's just like Gaethje versus Khabib. You don't have to wonder what's going to happen. One guy's going to try to get takedowns over and over and over again and suffocate the other guy. The other guy's going to try to knock him out on the way in. I didn't take Justin Gaethje. I didn't like his chances. But I like Drew Dober. I like what Trevor Immelman is doing up there. Trevor Whitman and the Elevation Fight Team and the changes they've made to Dober. And for whatever reason, I just think he's going to catch him and knock him the bleep out. So I'm taking Dober, and I'm taking Dober by KO. And I'm taking Dober by first round KO.
Oh, calling your shot there, Matt. I like it. Let me pull this up. So the problem I have here, as you all know, this is a betting show. This line is so wide to me. Yes. How do you not take Drew Dober? I mean, you've got minus 410 on Islam Makhachev, and don't get me wrong, this guy, he's incredible. But minus 410, I don't know about that. Plus 275 on the Dober side of things. And I think it's definitely a dog or pass from a betting perspective. They don't have the round props out just yet. I mean, under 1.5 is plus 245. So you're already looking at a nice line there if you're going to get it. Drew Dober wins inside the distance, not by knockout, but inside the distance, like he's ever submitting anybody, is plus 440. So, yeah, you're probably going to get around plus 500 on that knockout prop, something like that. And I can't blame you there, Matt. I took the shot on Gaethje.
What's Makhachev's only loss? A first-round knockout in the UFC.
Exactly. And I took the shot on Gaethje. I'll be honest. I did. And I thought that I've never bet against Khabib. I'm that guy that I've always been a Khabib, respectful of Khabib's skill set. I've been able to see his greatness. So I never bet against him. I thought Gaethje was the guy to do it. And Khabib even came out afterward and said that Gaethje's the guy that hit him harder than anybody he's ever experienced. So, like, he talks like iron. He doesn't give up in the fight. But afterwards, he admitted fully that Gaethje gave him a hell of a fight in that first round. I could see the same kind of thing happening here. Drew Dober, I think, is getting disrespected a little bit by this line. And I'm going to sit. I'm going to wait because I've got a lot of action already on this card. I don't know if I'm going to go ahead and pull the trigger here. But if Dober gets up over 300, I almost feel like I have to.
Yeah, that's how I felt. Looking at this number, I'm like, oh, man, they're going to make me bet Dober. And if I'm going to bet Dober, what's his path to victory? He needs to catch him and hurt him, and he needs to do it early against a guy who's got caught early and got knocked out before in the UFC. So it's going to be a big it's going to be a big price for sure. You're talking about taking a guy plus 300, taking him to win by knockout at plus 400, taking him to win by knockout in the first round at plus 600. You're talking like a third a unit bets on each. That's where I'm going to end up, though.
That's going to be ridiculous. I'm cheering for you, even if I don't quite get there. Even if I don't quite get there, I'm going to be sweating bullets on this fight just for you, Matt. That one's going to be fun. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Islam did what Islam does and grinds out Drew Dober. But I can see Dober putting up a fight, and like you said, the one loss is by knockout, so I could see him getting clipped coming in for a takedown or something like that for sure.
Yep.
All right. Now we had I don't know who said it. I lost it in the chat because we got over 600 live viewers. I apologize, but somebody asked me if I had hair in high school, and believe it or not, I was gorgeous. I had a full head of hair. It was the day when the Backstreet Boys roamed the earth. I had frosted tips and spikes. Y'all don't even know. I've crashed hard. How the mighty have fallen. It was good times. All right. Next up, we're getting to the good stuff, Matt. We've got 3 title fights, and the very first one coming up, bantamweight tilt, where I've got a feeling, I feel like you and I have talked about this one a couple times already. Peter Yan taking on Aljamain Sterling for the bantamweight strap. Yan is 15-1. Sterling is 19-3. And Matt, since I kind of know how you're feeling on this one, I'll let you lead this off. Tell us what you're doing on this fight.
Yeah, look, we broke this fight down a couple times before. The only difference is the last couple times we broke this fight down, there was never any minus money on our guy. The problem is we've broke this fight down so many times now that everyone's bet Aljamain Sterling along with us. And at this point, I'm glad I got some bets in early. I actually have a couple of plus 125s and a plus 120 because Aljo's going off the favorite here. It's just the bottom line. And a deserved favorite at that. He is going to be so much bigger, so much stronger. I think Jan's awesome. Super fun to watch. Love the way he fights. He is going to get wrestle mauled here for 5 rounds or choked out later in the fight. But I just don't see a way. I mean, the problem is at 135, while Jan has very, very good technical striking, he's not a one punch blow you away guy. And even if he catches Aljo once or twice, Aljo will eat him, walk through him. Okay, good shot, Jan. Now I get the takedown in 3 minutes of control and 3 minutes of hunting subs. And he is so big and so heavy to try to get off you at 135. Oh, man. I mean, I don't think it's going to be the most exciting title fight because people are used to Peter Yan fights being back and forth affairs. I don't think it's going to be that type of fight. It may not be as exciting as we want. It might be a lot of, just top control by Aljo again. But I think he wins a decision going away, like 49-46 or 50-45.
All right. Strong read there from my boy Matt. This is maybe the hardest fight to break down on the entire card, in my opinion. I mean, I've been a Yan truther since day one. This is a guy that I've ridden to the bank time and time again, and I find it just so difficult to step in front of him at this point. And Sterling, he's done nothing but impress his entire time so far. He got clipped once by an explosive power striker that can only win by first round knockout, and he was on the wrong side of it that day. He got clipped by Marlon Moraes. There's no shame in that. He came back better. He came back and did exactly what he needs to do. I think the height, the reach, the size, it's just going to be a problem. But I, again, don't want to disrespect Jan. And it's so rare that we see a champion, the guy with the belt around his waist, kick off as the underdog. That almost never happens. This line is all the way down to a pick'em at this point. Looks like it's even money, minus 110s across the board. Every time Peter Yan gets down to minus 105, it gets bought back the other way. So I don't know if it's truly going to flip, but the value on Aljamain Sterling is totally gone. If you could have gotten, the first time it was booked back when he was plus 150 or something like that, that's the place that you would want to be. I love your read on Aljamain Sterling by decision. I think he'll be able to keep it range and control it on the feet, mix in the takedowns, steal the rounds, get the top control. And if I was going to bet Aljo Sterling at this point, I know it's a 5-round fight and that's dangerous, but Jan is made out of iron. This guy's not going anywhere unless he gets submitted because Sterling is incredible on the floor. That decision prop, it's plus 345. You can get Aljamain Sterling by decision at plus 345. And that's not a bad way to look, in my opinion. The other way to go is right now they're hanging a total at 3.5. The over 3.5 is minus 120. The under 3.5 is plus 100. And that over looks very enticing to me. I think this fight is getting into the championship rounds. Jan does not have one-punch knockout power. I love the guy. He's never had one-punch knockout power. He relies on the volume. He relies on cranking up the heat on you. He's kind of like a Max Holloway where he cooks you the longer the fight goes on, and then he gets you late. Aljamain Sterling has only been knocked out by that flash one-shot knockout power before. So I don't think Jan's getting a knockout. Jan's never getting a submission. Sterling maybe getting a submission, not getting a knockout. So I think there's not a whole lot of ways this fight ends inside the distance. And I think that over 3.5 might be the way I end up looking.
I think that's maybe the safest bet on the card. I mean,
other than an Aljo,
other than an Aljo round one sub before they both get sweaty. How is this fight ending inside the distance? Jan's not one shot knocking him out. People think Aljo's chinny. Go watch the head kick he took from Marlon Moraes. Oh my God. Moraes almost kicked his head off. Besides that, this guy has been in there with plenty of bangers. Corey Sandhagen, Pedro Munoz, Cody Stamen, Renan Barão back in the day when Renan Barão could still bang. And nobody was hurting this guy. This fight is easily getting into the championship rounds. You might have just got on to the fact that while I do think that Aljo at a pick'em or a small underdog is value because I think he's going to win the fight, I actually think there's more value over 3.5 because there's just so few ways the fight ends before that. I think you just talked me into a second bet, my friend.
I think that's the way to play it. I think there's no point in what could be a very close, very competitive fight, a fight where there are long positions of either them feeling each other out on the feet or them being in control positions on the ground or against the cage. I think there's a lot of opportunities for this fight to get extended. I think the over 3.5 is the safe spot. And then you get that, hey, maybe one of these guys catches the other one late when things get greasy in the 4th and 5th round. You can squeeze right past that and not have to worry about picking a side. I think the over 3.5 is a spot that I'm going to end up making an official bet.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot, actually.
Yeah. Oh, and there he is. He made it. He came to the show, Canadian Bacon. Get your Venmo in the chat, son. We had a winning night, and everybody is deserving of at least $11.50 so they can go buy a Chipotle burrito, because that's what you promised if I had a losing night. And I know you want to take the angle of, but I said it was live. Only the live picks on the show. You didn't. You lying. Get out of here. We had a winning week last week. Get out of here and buy these people. Buy these hungry 625 viewers their Chipotle burrito. And my guy Elijah loves Chipotle. Let's go. Our co-main event of the evening, women's flyweight fight. Amanda Nunes, the women's GOAT, taking on Megan Anderson. Nunes 20-4. What can I say? You know, we've all seen it. We've all seen it. And you know what, Johnny, you're absolutely right. But win is a win, son. I don't want to hear it. we have all seen exactly what Nunes is capable of. You know, she's improved her wrestling. She's got rockets in her hands. And she just keeps getting better. She's turned into almost like a GSP, Matt. Like, she finds the weak point in her opponent's game, and then she exploits it. She's extremely well-rounded, and she's very physically strong. But at the end of the day, this is the featherweight title. This is 145. Amanda Nunes is a 135-pound fighter fighting up at 145 because she's that damn good, because she can. And she's taking on Megan Anderson, who's just a monster. She's a legitimate 145er. Megan couldn't make 135 if she chopped her leg off. Like, no, this way. Is a big, big woman. What do you have a play on this one? Because we've got minus 1,000 on Amanda Nunes, the GOAT, which makes it almost unbettable, and then plus 700 coming back on the underdog Megan Anderson. Are you taking the shot, Matt?
I'm tempted to, for a lot of reasons. You know, we know about, her and her significant other have had children now. That changes life. And she's done everything there is to do. She's been involved in and won the two most important fights in women's MMA history. Her win over Ronda Rousey, her knockout win over Cyborg. And along the way, she defeated Valentina Shevchenko twice and beat Raquel. I mean, she's done everything there is to do. It's hard for me to imagine that Amanda is even 15% as excited and fired up for this fight as Megan Anderson is. This is everything for her. For Amanda, she's actually in a new part of her life. She's a mom. She's in a relationship. She doesn't need to fight anymore because she's financially secure. Amanda Nunes' life is different. Now, she's the greatest of all time, but her life is different. Megan Anderson is a big, bad woman who is fighting for every scrap of the pork chop that there is. You have to bet dog or pass here. But I like what you said earlier, which is, why not take Anderson inside the distance? Can she really win a decision in this fight? The reason I'm going to go the other way and just take Megan Anderson plus 600, is that I think that she can. I actually think it's possible that she is just so big. And her pace, boy, she fights at a wicked pace. I think it's possible that the size ends up being a factor. And Nunes hasn't exactly been a cardio machine in rounds 4 and 5 throughout her entire career. I think it's possible that Nunes comes out on fire. They get grappling a bit, and she has to deal with the size and the strength of Anderson. And suddenly it's Anderson coming back, winning the championship rounds and stealing a close 48-47 decision.
Wow. Okay. All right. So that is not what I expected to hear. I don't hate it, though. I don't mind the angle whatsoever. Anybody following me on Twitter? Y'all know I already made a bet on this spot. I put a half unit on Megan Anderson inside the distance. And I did that because the number is ridiculous. I don't think that Megan Anderson can win a decision myself. I totally understand what you're saying, Matt. I see it. But I think that if anybody's going to win this thing by decision, it's going to be Amanda. And if Amanda tries to grapple with someone the size of Megan Anderson, I do think it's going to tire her out. And like you said, she has had some issues with her cardio in the past before. So if she tries to grapple Megan the way Holly Holm did, I don't know if Amanda Nunes can make it 25 minutes. So I wouldn't be shocked if the tables get turned on her. And Megan Anderson, when the younger underdog comes through in these title fights, they finish. I mean, if you look back at all the changing of hands, it's never somebody grinding out the victory to take the title unless your name's Kamaru Usman. Like, that's the only guy, and he came in as the favorite against Tyron Woodley, I think. Oh, no, never mind. Tyron Woodley was about minus 200. Anyway, more often than not, when these underdogs come through and win, they finish. So rather than taking the 700, which plus 700 is, already juicy as hell, I'm going to just put a half unit, a little baby stab on the inside the distance because it's like 11-1. And if she ends up tiring out Amanda Nunes, surviving the big shots, getting on top, elbowing her to death, and getting a referee stoppage to become the new champion at 145, I'm going to cash in on it. And I'll be honest with you guys, I know a lot of people in the chat and everybody in the world, Amanda Nunes is untouchable. Every champion eventually loses. It happens. And I have lost a half unit on a lot dumber bets than one that pays out 11-1. So it's a calculated shot. I'm not saying that Megan Anderson is the new thing. I'm not saying Megan Anderson is going to win this fight 9 out of 10 times. I'm saying 11-1 is way too wide for this insanely big, insanely powerful woman who's going to have size advantages and strength advantages. It's insane to think that 11-1 she can't finish Amanda Nunes if Nunes isn't quite on her game on Saturday. So I'm going to take a little stab.
I agree. I absolutely agree. I'd certainly rather be on that side than laying 12-1 with Amanda Nunes.
Exactly. It's damn near unbettable the other way. And if there was anything that I was going to do, I would go back to the spot that I always talk about but never actually have the balls to sit down and do, is the overs. We've got a total set at 1.5 because Megan Anderson is a knockout artist, because Amanda Nunes put away Cyborg in the first round. We got a total set at 1.5, and the minus 115 for over 1.5 seems incredibly cheap to me when you know these women are going to respect each other's power, and you know that one of them, not sure which one, but one of them is probably going to try to employ the grappling to extend this fight and wear the other one out. The over 2.5 is plus 163. The over 3.5 is plus 240. The over 4.5 is plus 345. They do not see this fight going to the judges' scorecards. And I absolutely can see this fight getting into the third and the fourth round. So the 1.5, the 2.5, the 3.5. I mean, I don't know if I'll do the 4.5 or the 5.5. I took a half unit shot there on Megan. I may be trying to sack up and play the totals here. And I say that every time. I have yet to actually do it. I've called it like 5 different times that I'm going to play all the overs, and I have yet to actually bet every single one of them. This week might be the week if I can find my balls.
All right.
Main event time, folks. Thank you all so much for spending your evening with us. My name is Clint from the Diehard MMA podcast. This is odds.com. I'm joined by my esteemed guest, Matt Holt, the president of US Integrity. And we are talking Jan Blachowicz taking on Israel Adesanya, the style bender, taking on the man who carries the legendary Polish power. Matt, this fight breaks my heart. I have been on the Jan train for years. He was my dark horse. He was the guy in the division that I said could take the title from John Jones if he was given the right opportunity. I swore up and down that he would beat all the contenders at 205, and then he did the damn thing. And I've cashed in plus money tickets with him all along the way, and it's been a glorious ride. But I have also been backing Israel Adesanya. This guy is McGregor 2.0. Like, as special as anybody thought McGregor was, Israel Adesanya is more special. He's got these ridiculous height and reach advantages. The way his mind works is special. He makes some of the best in-fight adjustments I've ever seen from anybody in my life. Israel Adesanya is a guy that I think is going to be untouchable for quite some time. Jan impressed in his last fight, got a big knockout win, but I don't think Israel Adesanya is going to make the mistakes to open up that opportunity for him. Without getting too technical, with too nitty-gritty, I think that Israel Adesanya should be a minus 350, minus 400 favorite here, Matt. He's coming up a weight class, and he's still going to be the bigger, taller man. He's coming up in weight, and he's going to still have a height and reach advantage. He's taken on Jan, and the whole world seems to be on Jan because he's the current champion, the current title holder. People feel he's getting disrespected, but the time to bet Jan was a year ago, 2 years ago, not now. And now everyone's betting on him. That line is crashing. Everyone's putting dog money on Jan because they just saw what he did to Dom Reyes. And I got to tell you, I think it's going to come down to speed. Israel Adesanya is going to be too fast for Jan. And I've talked up and down about the hand speed of Jan Blachowicz. He's fast, he's accurate, and that's been the way he's been able to win his fights. I don't think that's going to work against Israel Adesanya, Matt.
No, and I wanted to lean to the over, but I saw that the over is starting to get juiced pretty good. 2.5, I think over minus 250, which is a little bit steep because let's face it, 5 out of the last 8 fights for Adesanya have gone the distance. And what a surprise. Those are the only 5 fights in his career to go the distance, yet 5 out of his last 8 have. When he wants to, he is content to sit back and pick you apart. He doesn't have to hurt you. He doesn't have to knock you out. And I could certainly see a situation where Blachowicz is just a foot slow on every step and is just getting picked apart, and there's no need for Adesanya to try to knock him out. My fear here is that he might try, because this is the first time in a while that this guy's trying to prove a point. And let's face it, I think because I can't see, because of the way the fight is going to be fought, I don't think Blachowicz is fast enough to get a takedown. It would have to be lucky against the fence. I think if for whatever reason they ended up in the ground on a scramble, advantage Blachowicz. He is going to be a big, strong guy who's really well equipped on the ground. But I don't think he's actually going to be able to take it there. So even though I liked the over at first, because Adesanya is going to try to prove a point, and because Blachowicz only has 2 ways to win, land a miracle right hand, or the fight ends up because of a scramble on the ground and he's able to lock in some weird submission, both of which are very rare. I think Adesanya trying to prove a point knocks him out, and I'm going to actually play under 2.5 rounds at plus 140.
I don't hate that look, Matt. I don't hate it at all. I think both men are going to try and prove a point. I think Jan is feeling himself right now. I think he's feeling better than anybody out there, and he's going to look to defend his title against this young whippersnapper coming up to take a second belt. And I think he's going to try to do what he did in his last fight. And realistically, that was a great knockout from Jan. His speed and his accuracy get it done more often than not. But the guys he's knocked out before that have all been extremely questionable in the durability area. He got guys like Corey Anderson. He got, I'm blanking. Who was the other guy that he knocked out? The guy Bisping knocked out. I can't remember his name all of a sudden.
Luke Rockhold.
Luke Rockhold, thank you. I hate when the brain does that. So he knocked out 2 guys that just have no chin. And then he gets a good knockout over a young opponent who's still very green and made a couple of bad decisions in the fight. I think he's going to try and keep that going and come after Israel. And we know what Style Bender does best is take advantage of people when they try and come after him. I think he's going to be able to find the power shot. I think he's going to find the kill switch. And honestly, I think Jan might be too proud to grapple. I don't think he's even going to bother trying. But even if he does, Israel Adesanya is incredible at defending the takedown. I don't think he's going down. You can get Israel Adesanya inside the distance at plus 105. And I think that is a fine place to be. I don't I don't think that Israel Adesanya is going to grind away on Jan. I think when we get to the championship rounds, he's just going to be too big, too strong, and especially with the way he strikes, he is so fast and he hits so hard, you can't take 25 minutes of that. Yeah. I fully expect Israel Adesanya to knock Jan Blachowicz out on Saturday.
I do as well. I think Jan's getting knocked out.
Well, I haven't bet it yet. Like I said, money is pouring in on Jan. That number is coming down. Jan just moved down to, it's coming in now. He's down to plus 170 in some places.
Wow.
Hey, if I can get under minus 200 for Israel Adesanya, I will absolutely back the truck up on that. He's minus 250 now. He's minus 230 now. And I find it odd with the amount of money coming in on Jan, dropping from plus 210 to plus 270, but somehow Izzy's only gone from minus 250 to minus 230. Seems like the books don't mind holding that bigger chalky price on Israel Adesanya. It seems like they're trying to give people, dangle that little carrot out there on Jan Blachowicz.
Yeah, that's right. They know. And they'll get some plus money because he's the guy fighting the weight class up, the champion of a weight class up. So they'll continue to get money. But I think he gets KO'd big time here.
I agree. Couldn't agree more. That's it, folks. That is UFC 259. Thank you very much for spending the evening with us, Matt. That was a ton of fun. Always is. Love having you on the show. The floor is yours, my friend. If you want to tell the people where they can find you, what they can do to get in touch with you, go right ahead.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Love doing the pay-per-views. I also do Doug Kazarian's podcast every week for UFC with Doug. And I'm the owner and founder of US Integrity. We work with the Pac-12, Big 12, NBA, William Hill, MGM, every single operator. Anybody ever has any integrity issues dealing with any books, look us up at US Integrity, www.usintegrity.com. Thanks a lot, Clint. Great luck. Look, this is one of the most exciting cards of the year. Don't miss it. I literally want to bet on every fight.
You and me both. I'm tempted. I'm a degenerate at heart, so I want to get in there and just swing away. So absolutely a blast having you, Matt. Thank you so much for jumping on the show with us. As always, we love having you. And shout out to the chat. We broke a record. We got 620 live viewers, so thank you all very much. Good luck on all your betting action. Don't forget, we've got a ton of shows coming up on odds.com throughout the rest of the week. My boy Jimmy the Bag and all the other personalities breaking down all the other sports for you. I've got Total Madness coming out later this week. We've got the post-Friday weigh-in show, propping you up with my boys Manpreet and Cody Saftik. And then, of course, the final wrap-up roundtable show with all the boys on Friday night. Make sure you get back here and tune in for those. And then I just want to leave you all with a thought. I know we live in a day and an age right now that people seem to think that, kindness is weakness and, accepting responsibility for your actions is weakness. And I just want to let you all know that that's actually a sign of strength, being able to stand up and say when you did something wrong, analyze where you took a bad step, and then improve yourself and make yourself a better person moving forward. That's a sign of strength, and it's a sign of power. Don't dig your heels in on a bad opinion unless it's fading Aleksandar Rakic. Make sure you recognize your faults and improve yourselves on a daily basis. Thank you all for spending your evening with me. You have a great week. Let's roll.
Thanks, everybody.